as we continue to look at these pictures, I thought it's worth bringing you an eyewitness account from a chap called Ollie Foster, who was on the train. He's been quite widely quoted this morning. He said, and I think it's worth bringing this to you because it's a first-person account. It's detailed, but it gives a real indication as to how things were unfolding. He said, at first I thought it was a joke, but quickly realised they were serious. Some people coming thought he had a gun. We really didn't know what we were up against. As I ran, I put my hand on a chair. When I looked at my hand, it was covered in blood. There was blood on the top of countless chairs coming from two of the guys who'd been severely stabbed ahead of me. A young girl was distraught as the attacker tried to stab her, but a hero of an older man got in the way, taking a gash to his forehead. And that corroborates, quite a number of the other eyewitness reports we were getting as well. He goes on to say, and I think there was another stab wound to his neck. We all ran to the end of the train, and pretty soon we realised it was a short train. Everyone was queued at the front, and I was one of the people at the back of that queue. I was standing there with a few others trying to find any kind of weapon. One person I knew got ready with a Jack Daniels bottle. I had nothing for what felt like 10 minutes. I watched that carriage doorway waiting to see a figure appear. I knew he had a knife from everyone's wounds, but from somebody's previous comments, there was a chance he had a gun. So I stood there praying. We all tried to keep calm, but you could feel everyone's adrenaline. I mean, it's incredible stuff to hear from an eyewitness himself. He's posted this on the social media platform X to get his story out there. He said the train eventually stopped, and I thank God I didn't see anybody come through that doorway. Everyone ran out of the train at Huntingdon, and as I ran out, I looked to my right, knowing that's where the attacker would come. And that's when I saw about 20 people running in pure panic, at least 3 of which were covered in blood. One guy was holding his stomach, of which blood was pouring out, shouting, "Help, help, I've been stabbed." He goes on to say, we all ran together, being completely unarmed against an attacker or attackers that we thought had a gun. You really did feel helpless. To the police's credit, as we left the train station, they were all arriving. The response was really good, Ollie Foster says. Then he says, the scene became everything you're seeing on social media. I'm not sure how travelling on trains will feel after this. I haven't really processed it all. It felt genuinely surreal and is something I don't wish anyone to experience. Knowing somebody has weapons and you have nothing, knowing they're willing to strike a woman and I think children, it wasn't the England I grew up in. It was barbaric. That, the very powerful words from Ollie Foster, one of the passengers on board that train, has been widely reported as being on board that train, who has posted an account of those terrifying moments now on social media.
I mean, as you say, Mark, it's utterly horrific to hear those words. But what the police will be looking for now, and what we don't seem to have any indication of from them yet, is any motive for this.
Not as yet. I mean, they may know a motive and they're just not sharing it. We're in a different era now, given what has gone before with previous incidents. And we think back to Southport and all of the speculation that was out there, the void of a lack of information that was filled with lots of information on social media. Some of it wrong, but some of it actually right in the fullness of time. We got very assured words from the authorities and politicians who shouted down any talk that this was a terrorist incident. And then, of course, that prime suspect, Axel Rudakabana, at his trial, we actually heard that he had a fixation with the Taliban, that he had been downloading the Al-Qaeda cookbook, that sort of manual on how to prepare terrorist attacks. There's no defined motivation at the end of it, but all of the indicators are that there's some aspects of it that do fall down the line of terrorism, because he is now being held as a terrorist prisoner. He was prosecuted on terrorism charges. So it just shows you, we know the fallout from Southport resulted in a great deal of anger, and then the protests and unrest that we saw in multiple locations around the country. And we're told that the authorities are cognizant of that. They try to get information out as quickly as possible. That's why they tell us now, for instance, about the ethnicity of someone involved in an incident like that, like this. If they've been arrested, we normally get that kind of information, and of course what their potential motivation might be, because these things can evolve as they investigate and interrogate an individual. They might get more in the way of information, but they will have been able, just from the very early stages, able to probably identify whoever their suspect or suspects are quite quickly from taking those fingerprints, photographs, other DNA. So if this person has been known to the authorities before for previous offending behaviour, or is on terror databases, that kind of thing, that helps them immediately get a handle on who someone is. And it may be that that person has cooperated in the first instance. I was saying a little earlier today that normally people, when they're arrested at night time, are processed but then put in a cell overnight and not really interviewed until the morning, just for the PACE, Police and Crime Evidence Act rules stipulate that, to ensure that defence lawyers can't come back further down the line and say that their clients were too tired when they were initially first interviewed. So it may be that this person has not yet been interviewed in detail and able to give their account, if they're even willing, of course, to be that cooperative. Sometimes they're not.
Whether or not this is a terrorist attack, it was terrifying. And I think many people watching this today will be imagining how they would have reacted, what they would have done in the circumstances. And it's quite interesting, because I was just thinking, what would I have done? And then I thought, well, I'd have locked the door. But of course, if you lock the door of the train, and I don't know how you can lock the door of the train, but if you could lock the door of the train, what you're then doing is denying an exit for anybody else who's trying to get away from these people. It is, as I said, it's terrifying any which way you look at it.
You're absolutely right, Penny, that obviously people can get hung up and fixated on the motivation or this being declared a terrorist incident. What absolutely is the case is that this was a marauding attack, whatever the actual motivation behind this attack was, and that will come out in the fullness of time. Now, people want to know this, understandably, because they're very concerned about the wider threat that's out there, and whether this possibly is an indicator that we are back in a period that we were in. The last time was 2017, which was a horrific period at the height of the Islamic State, ISIS terrorist group, when there were 5 terrorist attacks in that single year of 2017, including, of course, the Westminster Bridge attack, in which multiple people died on the bridge, and then that police officer, Keith Palmer, died at the Palace of Westminster as well. You then had the Manchester Arena bombing, you had the Borough Market attack. It was just the most horrific year. And there is a real concern that because of world events, and Gaza is a particular issue that really has the police and security services quite exercised, because they are seeing an uptick in the potential threats facing the UK and other European countries because of that. There have already been attacks that have been linked or motivated by those that support, Hamas and what has been happening in Gaza, and not supporting what has been happening in Gaza, but responding to what has been happening in Gaza. And there is real concern now that other people motivated and radicalised by that could be willing to enact that. I should always add the caveat here, we don't know the motivation of this individual or whether it will even at the end of the day turn out to be terrorism. But that's why people, Penny, want to know quickly that it either was or wasn't a terrorism attack and who it can be attributed to, because given what happened at the synagogue just very recently up in Manchester as well, it could denote a very worrying period that we're entering into. And you're right about what was happening, Penny, on that train. What I'm now piecing together from very consistent eyewitness reports is that it seems to have happened towards the rear of the train itself, with screams that were heard and shouting that was heard from those rear carriages. And then people, Stephen and Penny, people running through the train shouting that someone had a knife, people covered in blood, and then understandably you were asking where do you hide, and you can't really, you just push up towards the front of the train, which is what the vast majority of people on that train, if they could, did. Others locked themselves in the toilets of the train.